I've always believed that cars tell stories. Some are loud and flashy. Some are humble and quiet. But every one of them carries the imprint of the people who drive them. And that day, the story rolled in on 4 overheating wheels, wrapped in midnight blue paint, and driven by a woman who looked like she didn't belong anywhere near Maplewood. I was finishing up a brake job on a dusty old Ford when I saw it pull into the lot, sleek, low to the ground, with an engine that clearly didn't appreciate the summer heat. Smoke puffed from the hood like a teapot throwing a tantrum. I wiped the sweat from my brow, tossed my rag over my shoulder, and stepped out from under the lift. She stepped out of the car like a scene from a movie, graceful, sharp-eyed, wearing a crisp white blouse that was clinging to her from the heat. Her chestnut brown hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and her heels clicked on the pavement like she'd never set foot in a mechanic's shop before. But when she looked at that smoking engine, biting her lip in frustration, I saw something familiar, someone out of place. Maybe, but real. Looks like your radiator's having a meltdown, I said, walking over and nodding at the front of her car. Yeah, she said, with a voice as smooth as silk, but worn around the edges. I noticed. You're lucky it happened here, I said, crouching beside the grill. Few more miles, and you'd have been stranded out on the highway. She gave a dry chuckle. That would have made my day worse. Believe it or not. Rough day, I asked. You have no idea. I didn't press. Never did. That's the thing about this job. Sometimes people just need their car fixed. Sometimes they need someone to not ask too many questions. I tapped the fender lightly. Popped the hood for me. She hesitated just a second, then pulled the lever. The hood released with a click, and I lifted it, letting a wave of hot steam hit my face. The radiator was fried. Classic case. This'll take a couple of hours, give or take, I said, more to myself than her. Do I have a choice? She muttered, crossing her arms. You got somewhere to be. She looked at me for a moment. I had a meeting. Doesn't really matter now. There was something in her voice I couldn't place. Disappointment. Maybe resignation. I nodded toward the office. You can wait inside. AC works. Might still have a cold soda or two. She blinked at me, like she hadn't expected kindness from a stranger. Then, quietly, thanks. While I worked, she sat inside the office, sipping a soda and watching me through the glass. Not impatient, not bored, just watching. That's when I started to wonder, who was this woman? I didn't expect to see her again. In my line of work, people come and go, especially the ones driving cars worth more than my yearly salary. Most of them never look back, and I figured she was no different. But I was wrong. It was 3 days later. A quiet Thursday afternoon. Just past 3. I had just finished fixing a timing belt when I heard the low, unmistakable purr of an expensive engine. I stepped out of the garage, wiping my hands on a rag, and there it was again. That same midnight blue phantom. No smoke, this time. No steam rising from the hood. Just a perfect machine rolling up like it belonged there. And then she stepped out. Only this time, she wasn't in that crisp white blouse. She was dressed down dark jeans, a fitted blazer over a light shirt, and somehow she looked even more out of place. But more real. Back so soon, I asked, raising an eyebrow. She leaned casually against the hood, Thought I'd drop by. You did fix my car. After all, I crossed my arms, half squinting at her. Did I? Or did you just want an excuse to come back? She smiled. Not that polite kind. A real one. Maybe a little of both. Then she did something unexpected. She extended her hand. Méline Sinclair, she said. I froze for half a second. That name meant something. Everyone in the auto world knew it. CEO of Sinclair Motors, one of the biggest automotive companies in the country. A billionaire in sneakers. I took her hand. Firm grip. Non, Sancy. Caleb Reed. You knew. Didn't you? She asked, tilting her head. Knew who I was? I shrugged. I figured it out. But it didn't really matter. She stared at me, trying to read my face. Most people, when they find out who she is, they either grovel or get greedy. I didn't do either. And maybe that's why she came back. Most people treat me differently, she said. I'm not most people. She smiled again. Not the CEO smile. Not the public face. Just here. Then she glanced around the shop. The old tires stacked in the corner. The faded posters on the walls. The lingering smell of oil and burnt rubber. You run this place. Nah, I said, shaking my head. This belongs to Old Man Harrison. I've worked here since I was 16. She nodded slowly, then turned to me. You ever think about doing more? That question caught me off guard. More. Yeah. Bigger. Your own shop. Maybe even beyond Maplewood. I chuckled, rubbing my jaw. You sound like my mother. She sounds smart. Too smart. I muttered, then narrowed my eyes. Why are you asking? And that's when she reached into her bag and pulled out a sleek, black envelope. I have an offer for you, she said, handing it over. I opened it slowly. Inside wasn't a check. Wasn't even a simple job offer. It was a full-blown contract. Private vehicle specialist. Full-time. High salary. Relocation required. My stomach twisted. This is for Sinclair Motors, I asked. She nodded. I need someone honest, someone who knows cars, someone who tells me the truth even when I don't want to hear it. I let out a quiet laugh. And you think that's me? I know it is, she said. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't know what to say. I must have read that contract 10 times. Each word felt heavier than the last. The pay was ridiculous. The perks, out of this world. I could have paid off my mom's house, bought new tools, maybe even opened my own place. But it wasn't just about the money. It was about what it would cost me. Leaving Maplewood meant walking away from the only life I'd ever known, from the people who counted on me, from late nights fixing old trucks and mornings spent drinking burnt coffee in a shop that smelled like grease and memories. I didn't say yes. Not right away. Instead, I told her I needed time. And Méline, she didn't push. She just nodded, handed me her card, and said, think about it. So I did. I spent the next 2 nights staring at that damn envelope. I didn't sleep. Just lay on the garage roof with a beer in my hand and a storm in my chest. And then I called her. She answered on the second ring. Caleb. She said, like she'd been expecting me. I didn't say yes. I told her, I know, but I want to talk. Come to Chicago. She said, let me show you what I mean. 2 days later, I pulled up in front of Sinclair Motors headquarters, a towering glass beast that looked like it didn't belong on the same planet as my garage. The building shimmered in the afternoon sun. Clean lines, polished steel. People in suits moved like clockwork. Phones glued to their ears. Eyes scanning digital worlds I didn't belong to. I walked in wearing jeans, boots, and a leather jacket with a busted zipper. And I didn't care. The receptionist blinked when I gave her my name. "One moment," she said. Then, "Miss Sinclair will see you now." The elevator ride was quiet. My reflection stared back at me from the chrome walls. And for the first time in years, I felt out of place. Then the doors opened, and there she was, standing in a corner office bigger than my apartment. Malene Sinclair turned to face me. "You came," she said, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Still haven't said yes." I reminded her. She smiled. "I didn't expect you to." We sat, talked. She showed me blueprints not of a company garage, not a corporate job, but a custom auto shop. My name on the deed, my dream on paper. And she looked me in the eye and said, "I don't want to hire you, Caleb. I want to build something with you." I couldn't breathe. No one had ever said that to me before. I stared down at those plans, my hands shaking slightly. The dream I'd never dared to voice was right there, offered by a woman I barely knew, but somehow trusted. "You're serious?" I asked. She nodded. "Dead serious." And then she smiled, like she already knew I'd say yes. I don't know when the moment came, the one where I made the leap. Maybe it wasn't just one moment. Maybe it was a slow build. A woman who offered me a dream I never dared ask for, and looked me in the eye like she believed in it more than I ever had. A week after that meeting in her office, I called her again. "Let's do it," I said. "Let's build the garage." There was a pause on the other end, just for a second. Then she said, "Good, because the architects are already waiting." Of course they were. The next few days moved fast. I packed up the few things I had in Maplewood tools. Photos. The jacket my mom gave me after my first repair job, and drove to Chicago with a gut full of nerves and a heart that wasn't quite sure what it had signed up for. The site was a big, empty lot in the industrial district, concrete and steel bones, surrounded by old factories and rusted train tracks. It didn't look like much, but Malene stood there, clipboard in hand, already in motion. She wasn't waiting for anyone. "You're late," she said as I stepped out of my truck. I glanced at the time. "I'm literally early." She smirked. "You'll learn I don't like wasting minutes." And just like that, we were in it. Meetings with contractors, material approvals, debates over floor plans and where to put the lifts. I wasn't used to this kind of work, but Malene didn't treat me like I didn't belong. In fact, she asked questions, listened, let me lead when it came to the tools, the workflow, the way a garage should breathe and move. We were different completely. She was sharp edges, all strategy and vision. I was grease and instinct. But somehow, it worked. One night, after everyone else had left, I found her standing in the middle of the empty steel frame, arms crossed, head tilted up at the ceiling beams. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Imagining it finished," she said. I stepped beside her. "What do you see?" She didn't answer right away. Then, softly, something real, something I didn't just inherit, something I helped build. I looked at her, really looked, and for the first time, I saw it. She wasn't just a billionaire in control of a company. She was a woman trying to make something that felt like her own, and somehow, she wanted to make it with me. They say building something from scratch reveals a lot about a person, what they fight for, what they compromise on, what they truly care about. I learned more about Malene in the first month of construction than I could have in a year of dinners and interviews. She showed up every day, heels swapped for boots, sleeves rolled up, not afraid to get her hands dirty. And I'm not talking figuratively. One morning, I found her arguing with the foreman over the angle of the garage bay doors, blueprints in one hand, grease on the other. She wasn't some figurehead. She was in it. And me, I was right there beside her. We fought over everything. Floor tile colors, lighting placement, whether we should add a customer waiting lounge or keep it bare bones. But every argument ended the same way, with laughter, with a stupid inside joke, with her rolling her eyes and calling me stubborn. She was always a little exasperated. I was always a little in awe. And then there were the late nights, when the crew went home, and the blueprints came out again. Pizza boxes on the hood of my truck, coffee cups beside engine parts. Me explaining the difference between a torque wrench and a breaker bar. Her explaining the difference between equity and liability. And somewhere in between all the plans and paper, we started talking about things that had nothing to do with business. I told her about my mom, how she raised me alone after my dad left. About the time I sold my first rebuilt engine and used the money to pay her medical bills. Malene listened, not just with polite nods, but with real silence. The kind that holds space for you. She didn't talk much about her family. Just said things got complicated when money entered the picture. But I saw it, how her jaw tightened when she mentioned her father, how she changed the subject when I asked about home. And I didn't push. Because sometimes silence says more than answers. Still, there were moments I caught her looking at me, like she was trying to memorize something she didn't want to lose. And I'd pretend I didn't notice. Until the night she brought takeout to the garage and stayed past midnight. We were sitting on the floor, blueprint spread out, laughing about the contractor who'd mixed up metric and imperial measurements. And then, suddenly, she stopped laughing. What I asked, she stared at me. Serious now? You ever think this is crazy? I smiled. All the time. I mean, you and me. This? I looked at her. Really looked. And I knew what she meant. She wasn't just talking about the business. I do. I said, but crazy doesn't mean wrong. She didn't say anything after that. Just scooted closer, her shoulder brushing mine. And for the first time, I let myself feel it. That whatever we were building, it wasn't just walls and beams. It was us. O'Reilly's wasn't exactly fancy. Sticky floors. Faded jukebox. The kind of place where the beer is cheap and the fries are always a little too salty. But that night, it felt like the center of the world. Malene had insisted on taking the entire crew out after another long week. She said it was team bonding, but something in her eyes told me she just needed a break. So, there we were. Me, her, the crew, and a bar full of loud music and louder laughter. And for once, she didn't look like the CEO of anything. She looked happy. Jeans, a leather jacket, air loose, laughing with Rick, the oldest mechanic in the shop, like she'd known him for years. I stood at the bar, drink in hand, watching her move through the room like she belonged. And then Rick nudged me. "You're in trouble." Kid, he muttered. I raised an eyebrow. How? So, she looks at you like she already picked out curtains. I choked on my drink. Jesus. Rick. He just grinned. You're the only one who doesn't see it. But he was wrong. I saw it. Had been seeing it. I just didn't know what the hell to do with it. Then the jukebox changed songs, something slow, something old, and the dance floor cleared a bit. And she walked up to me. Dance with me, she said. He blinked. Here, here. And without waiting, she grabbed my hand and pulled me out onto the floor. Her hand slid into mine like it belonged there. Her other hand rested lightly on my shoulder. And we swayed, slow and easy. Under the flickering bar lights, I couldn't tell you what song was playing. All I could focus on was the way she felt against me. You always ask guys to dance in bars like this, I asked. She smirked. Only the ones who pretend they don't notice. I'm watching them. I chuckled, tightening my hold slightly. I noticed. She looked up at me, really looked. And for a second, the whole room disappeared. I could have kissed her right then. God knows I wanted to, but I didn't. Because even though everything about her made me feel like gravity had shifted, this wasn't the moment. Not yet. When the song ended, neither of us let go right away. She stepped back first, eyes a little softer, cheeks flushed. We should get back, she said. Yeah, I replied, probably. But in that moment, under the neon glow of a rundown bar, something changed. And we both felt it. It happened late. Later than it should have. Maybe. But exactly when it needed to. The garage was nearly finished. Walls painted. Lights humming. Tools hanging on fresh pegboards. It looked like a real place now. A place we built with our hands. Our choices. Our shared stubbornness. Malene showed up after sunset. Heels clicking against concrete. Carrying 2 coffees. Thought you'd still be here, she said. I always was. We stood there in the silence of the new space. The scent of fresh paint mixing with grease and metal. And maybe it was the quiet, or the way the soft light hit her face, or just weeks of something unspoken finally cracking through. But I said it. I don't know what this is. I admitted. But I know I don't want to pretend anymore. She didn't answer right away. Just stepped closer. Slow. Cautious. Like she was waiting for the floor to give out from under her. Then neither do I. And before I could think, before either of us could overanalyze it to death, I kissed her. It wasn't soft. It wasn't delicate. It was everything we'd been holding back for weeks. And she kissed me back like she'd been waiting just as long. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathless. That was overdue. She whispered. I smirked. Just a little. She rested her forehead against mine, her hand still on my chest. And for the first time, it didn't feel impossible. It felt real. She stayed that night. We didn't say much after. No need. There was peace in the silence. And for once, the chaos in my head had a voice that matched mine. But the next morning, she was gone. Knew not. No text. Just cold sheets and a room too quiet. I sat up, rubbing the back of my neck. 100 thoughts racing. What did that mean? Did she regret it? Was I just a mistake she'd pack away in the daylight? I told myself not to spiral. But when hours passed and I still heard nothing, I started to fall. 2 days. That's how long it had been since she disappeared. No calls. No texts. Just silence. I'm not the kind of guy who plays games. So, on the third morning, I got in my truck and drove straight to Sinclair Motors. Didn't care that I looked out of place. Didn't care that my jeans still smelled like oil or that my boots tracked in dust. This wasn't about image. This was about answers. The receptionist blinked when I walked in. "I need to see Malene," I said, voice steady. "I'm sorry. Miss Sinclair is in a meeting. I'll wait." I sat down across from her desk and crossed my arms. I wasn't leaving. 20 minutes later, the elevator opened, and there she was. Perfect hair, tailored suit, phone in hand. She stopped mid-step. The second she saw me, her eyes flickered shock, then guilt. "Caleb," she said quietly, "we need to talk." She glanced at the executives filing out behind her, then gave a small nod. "My office." Now, the second the door closed behind us, I turned to her. "You disappeared." Malene let out a breath and ran a hand through her hair. "I didn't disappear. You left without a word." "I had work." "No." I shook my head. "That's not what this is. Don't do that. Don't act like nothing happened." She pressed her lips together. I stepped closer. "Look, I'm not asking for fairy tales, Maddie, but after everything, after last night, you vanish." Her voice cracked just a little. "I panicked." I exhaled. "Why?" She looked at me, raw and tired. "Because I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to wake up next to someone and not feel like I'm giving up control. I've spent years being the one in charge, being untouchable. And suddenly, you're human." I finished for her. She flinched. I softened. "You don't have to be perfect around me. You don't have to disappear the second things get real." She stared at me. "I'm scared." "Caleb." I nodded. "So am I." Silence stretched between us. Then I added, quietly, "But I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere unless you make me." Malene took a shaky breath. "I don't want you to go," she whispered. "Then stop running." And finally she did. I didn't expect her to do what she did next. The next morning, Malene walked into the boardroom like a storm in heels. I wasn't there, but I heard about it from someone who was. They said she didn't flinch, didn't smile, didn't ask for permission. She sat down at the head of the table, looked Gerald Whitmore, one of the oldest, nastiest board members, straight in the eye, and said, "You want to talk about my personal life? Fine. Let's talk." They told her she was distracted, that she was spending too much time investing in a mechanic, that her choices were starting to reflect poorly on the brand. Malene didn't blink. She laid out Sinclair Motors' numbers up 12% that quarter. 2 new markets entered. A major EV partnership secured. Then she said, "If that's what distraction looks like, maybe we should all try it." And just like that, the room went quiet. I didn't hear it from her directly. She didn't boast. But that night, when she met me back at the garage, I could see it in her eyes. She had chosen, and not just me, us. I told them, she said simply, that what we're building here is mine to invest in, that no one gets to tell me who I'm allowed to believe in. I looked at her, chest tight. Then she handed me a folder. I opened it. It was a partnership agreement. 50-50 its ownership. My name was on the deed. You did this without asking me, I said. Stunned. She nodded. Because I needed you to know, this isn't just about business. It's about you. I stared at her, 1,000 thoughts racing. But only one thing came out of my mouth. You sure? She smiled. Soft and steady. Yes. And that was it. That was the moment everything settled. No more lines. No more doubt. Just us. The grand opening wasn't supposed to be a big deal. A few friends. A ribbon. Maybe some donuts. That's what I'd planned. But Malene had other ideas. When I pulled up that morning, the parking lot was already full. Rows of cars, classics, customs, even a few luxury models I'd only ever seen in magazines. People everywhere. Some were from Maplewood. Some were from the city. Some were Sinclair Motors execs who came not because they had to, but because they wanted to see what we'd built. I stepped out of my truck and blinked at the crowd. Then I saw her standing near the entrance in jeans, boots, and a Sinclair Motors bomber jacket. No suit, no entourage, just her. She walked up to me, calm as ever. Still think no one's gonna show, she asked. I shook my head. You did all this, she smiled. I just made a few calls. A few calls. My ass. Cameras showed up. So did reporters. And somewhere in the middle of it all, she reached for my hand. Right there. In front of everyone. Fingers laced. Sure and proud. This is your garage. Caleb. She said. But it's our story. And I didn't care who was watching. Because after everything, after the hard days and late nights, the silence, the distance, the fight, we were here, together. When we cut the ribbon, people cheered. When I fired up the first engine inside the bay, the roar shook the walls. And when I looked at her standing beside me, smiling like she'd never smiled for anyone else I knew, this wasn't just a job or a business. This was home. Later that night, after the crowds had thinned, we sat on the hood of my truck, watching the lights of the garage glow under the dark sky. Malene leaned into me, head on my shoulder. You ready? She asked. For what? For everything. I looked at her. At the woman who changed everything without asking me to change who I was. And I said, yeah, I'm ready. Because sometimes the biggest risk isn't building something new. It's letting someone in. And for once, I was all in. Sometimes, love doesn't arrive with fireworks. Sometimes, it pulls up in an old pickup truck, hands you a wrench, and quietly rewrites everything you thought you knew about yourself. If this story touched you, tell us in the comments, have you ever taken a risk for someone who changed your life? We'd love to hear your story. Don't forget to like the video if it moved you. Subscribe to the channel for more real, heartfelt stories like this one. Your voice matters, and someone out there needs to hear it. Thank you for watching.